That's pretty much how I start every morning when I have to remind myself that it's 7 months until the World Cup. You know, after all the euphoria of qualifying, game after game after game, talking about rosters and this, and then it's going to be quiet for a while. But the good news is we have something to talk about, and that's the World Cup. You know, we all shared that pain in 2017 when the U.S. discovered they weren't going to the 2018 World Cup. But in December of 2017, the World Cup draw, to me, was almost as bad. Watching that, almost feeling like you were waking from a horrible nightmare and that the U.S. would get pulled out of one of the pots. And that's when it really sunk in, that the World Cup field is set and the U.S. isn't in it. But this time we got to see it, and we didn't have to wait too long finding out in Group B. There is the World Cup draw. You can't see this enough, right? And it's a really good draw for the U.S. And obviously, all eyes will turn to the fact that England's in the group and a huge matchup that will be coming November 25th, Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, when these two teams shall meet. It's really exciting, and there's a history here. There are a lot of ties that bind between England and the United States, and we'll talk a little bit about the game here on the Soccer OG. Perhaps my best performing podcast yet, the Soccer OG podcast, where all podcasts are available. Join me and Christopher Sullivan, Sully, as we break down the World Cup field. Check out our live stream from the draw here on YouTube. It's the last video I posted, a collaboration with 110 Football. Skip through it if you'd like. A lot of great guests. I think you'll enjoy it. So you got that. And please like and subscribe right here. Leave a comment. I'd love to chat with you guys on there, whether you like or not, disagree. That's what we're here for. There's going to be a lot of agreements and disagreements. There's going to be a lot of fights. There's going to be a lot of beer spilt, no doubt, before and during the matchup on the November the 25th. So I'm going to start about the size and scope of it. Was this the biggest team you could draw in the groups? Probably. I mean, the argument would be maybe Messi and Argentina. Brazil, because Brazil is the most popular team in the world. I don't think any of the other European teams can hold it to England. And when you want to build a sport here in the United States, you got to have these matchups. And we've had some famous ones with the United States. Adding fuel to the fire is the perception of the English, the U.S. And you could see when the draw came out, and look, this is a good draw from England. If you're English and you saw Iran, USA, who have labored during qualifying, let's not kid ourselves here, and then either Wales, Scotland, or Ukraine, yeah, you're thinking 9 points. Why wouldn't you? You are a top 5 team in the world. And we saw it in the headlines. All the tabloids, the back pages. Let's see what the back pages said. Do they still read that in England? I mean, they're really connected to the papers. Hats off to them. You can't stop progress with the internet. You still want to get your paper and see what's on the back. Here's a typical one. Yankee Doodle Dandy with Gareth Southgate. Yeah, it's a celebration. Or maybe you go back to the ones in 2010. Remember, easy, mate, easy. And how about, here's the jab at America. Here's hoping that England's United shoots some totally awesome strikes past the goaltender in the Soccer Ball World Series. And that's probably how they read it with an American voice. But there is that's a little grind. That's the perception here. And we'll talk about that too, because it matters here. And you want to get over the English because of it. I also want to show this headline. I mean, how do they get away with that? It's Iranian men, hallelujah. Someone should get fired for that headline. I mean, they're having a party. They already think they're going there. And that's the thing. That's the thing that everyone hates about England. They always come in, oh, it's coming home. It's here, it is. Look, they almost brought it home on these last 2 major competitions. So that is part of the story here. It's going to be huge, and I'm happy for Fox and Telemundo because they didn't get the U.S. draw in 2018, and now they get this. And the game on that Friday, November 25th, is probably going to it will set all sorts of U.S. men's national team viewing records. It's at 2 p.m. Eastern time. It's going to be on Big Fox. Everyone's going to be home watching it. It wasn't on Thanksgiving where you had to compete with the NFL. This is it. This is going to be the game, and people are going to go crazy about it because it's England. There is a lot of motivation, and we talk about the connections to England. Let's start with the Premier League. It's a $2 billion property here in the United States. Anyone who watches soccer gets up and watches the Premier League. Anyone who plays soccer, these young American players get up and watch Rebecca Lowe and the Robbies and Arlo White and all that. That's part of their routine. It's been a phenomenon, and you got to give credit to those guys. Then you have the Ted Lasso effect, right? A show like Ted Lasso would have never happened if there wasn't a connection to English football, because now you have Americans truly caring about English characters in a soccer football setting. These are all things that make this rivalry very different than the last time these two teams played in 2010. This is the third World Cup meeting. The U.S. have never lost to England. There have been about 12 meetings in total. 1950 was a U.S. victory which knocked England out, and they made a movie out of it. The game of their lives, I believe, with David Anspall. I actually auditioned for it. Eric Winaldo was doing the casting, if you can believe that, and he said I wasn't good enough. The soccer part, not the acting. I had that down pat. 2010, the United States, and this great headline from the New York Post, USA wins 1-1. Love it, love it. That is just good. That's a good headline. Stay away from the Iranian men, okay? Just the headlines, not actually Iranian men. So this is another one, and this is different. I mean, 1950, what could we even take out of that? A stunning result, because England were, a true professional outfit, and the U.S. were a bunch of ham and eggers from St. Louis coming in there and getting this result. This is also going to be big because of those perceptions, and I will interject myself into this because I've been covering the sport since 1998, and I covered the Premier League in Fox back then. And we have dealt so frequently with the biases and the stereotypes. I have, for one, I remember when I would call games, if it was airing in the United Kingdom, they would replace me with an English broadcaster because they wanted a authentic voice, which is, I guess, is fine. It bothered me, but we don't do that here in this country. If we did, things would be very different. But in England, they wanted an English voice. So, those are things that we've had to deal with, looking down upon it. We saw the treatment of Jesse Marsh recently. We saw the treatment by Jesse Marsh, man. Breaking that out. Come on, Jesse. We saw the treatment of Bob Bradley. The English, not across the board, but you hear it in the media. They look at the U.S. and say, hands off, we'll do it for you. You may not know the intricacies of sport. Please use the terminology we use here, like pitch and nil, all of this stuff. And it's very obtuse. I mean, it is, they get into the fabric and we kind of go along with it. But that's created a pushback here in this country. And we've seen it with a lot of people here who do cover the sport. So anytime you can get one over the English, it's good. So a victory over England in that game would be seismic. Winning that game is a different story, and we'll get to that. As we go back to the World Cup draw, I just want to say this. We'll have plenty of time to talk about it. The England game could be it won't be a trap. The U.S. is going to approach these games in each separate way. But the U.S., England's not going to drop points in that group. They will maybe here or there in a game, but they're not going to lose a couple games. They're going to win 2, if not all 3. They're just elite. And the U.S. really have to keep an eye out to compete with Iran and whoever emerges from Wales, Scotland, and Ukraine. Now, just so you know that Scotland and Ukraine are going to play, I believe, June 24th, which means I don't know the date, but Wales plays the winner of that. So you're not going to know the opponent here for another 4 months, which is not ideal. It's a little bit unfair when you look at how these other teams and players can start scouting in. And not only scouting, but to try and find games for your team that could imitate what you're going to see in a World Cup, right? You want that. If you're playing Wales, you want a team that plays like Wales. If you want to face Iran, you want a team that plays like Iran. So that doesn't help that. But the U.S. had a gift in the draw because they will face Group A in the round of 16. And Group A doesn't have a legit pot one team. Qatar was the pot one team. So you've avoided, if you finish second, you avoid a team like Brazil, Argentina, France, Spain. It might be Netherlands who wins that group, but that's a better shot because that's a flawed team. I mean, they're ranked 10th in the world, but this is not England. This is not France. So, finishing second, and maybe Group A kind of goes in disarray. So you really got to focus on that. And you got to make sure you get points in all these games. But if you get points in England, then that's good news. So that's where it is. Now, I did send this tweet when the draw was. And look, people, it got some good traffic. People go, oh, yeah, we've done it before. Yeah, we'll do it again. Everything we have seen, and that's why I said pretense, because everything we have seen, you would be crazy to think that the U.S. can run with England at this moment. Lots can change. The U.S. hopefully secure the goalkeeping situation. They get someone who can score goals. They're still very young. This is, I think, an average age of 24, might be the youngest team in the World Cup. So you're giving up a lot. It's an old man's game in the World Cup. Most teams are averaging 28, 29, 30, right? So it's right now squeaking by and qualifying. You're not scaring the English if you are the United States. By the way, I did want to mention how Greg Berhalter was excited, and also Christian Pulisic said he was reached out by Mason Mount, and they talked about the game. How cool is that? That they're already talking about it. Jack Grealish and Zach Steffen had a similar interaction when they found out. So the English are getting into it. This is a big deal for them, and hopefully we can build the rivalry out of this. Because, there is positives to face the U.S. I mean, England's got great opponents and a schedule to die for, but this is going to be fun for them too. So now we get to the point of my tweet. So the tweet said it's not realistic to think that they get the result. I'm not saying the U.S. can't, but a lot has to change. And we got to look at England closely because people go, we did this in 2010. I'll remind you that England team went to play Germany in the next round and were demolished 4-1. So that was a team on the back end. This is the best England team I have ever seen. Another reason people dislike England because of this it's coming home business and the fact that, oh yeah, this is the year. And we rolled their eyes and we're like, here we go again. Well, they got to a World Cup semifinal. And then after that, they got to a Euro final. And they looked really, really good in those competitions. In the Euros, they were blowing people out. Remember, they crushed Germany, crushed Ukraine. Denmark in the semis, they took them to extra time. But that was really England as good as you can get. They just let the early goal and were chasing the game, but they caught the game and then won the game. This is a superb team. England's doing it right at every level. Let's start from the kids. 2017, FIFA World Cup Under-17 World Champions. 2017 FIFA World Cup Under-20 World Champions. So they're developing players and the senior players and the backing of the Premier League where these players do very well, the promise of big money. It all helps the English system. This isn't a generation getting old. This is still a team close to their prime. Harry Kane and Raheem Sterling and Jordan Henderson's a little bit older. Harry Maguire, John Stones, and Kyle Walker. But they also have this young group of players that are, filling the gaps. Phil Foden, Bukayo Saka, Marcus Rashford, Jadon Sancho, Jude Bellingham. My God, this is a really good program. So they're doing it right in every department. This is a team that could win. When the English say they can win the World Cup, this team can win the World Cup. And they got a good draw. So the U.S. are going to be distinct underdogs to win this group, certainly, and to get a result here. So we can get excited about this game, but just temper that a little bit with what the challenge that lies ahead. This is like facing one of the top teams. I cannot stress that enough. The other thing about this English team, which is a little bit different, is they're likable. They're a likable team. They, teams past, the Wayne Rooney teams and the David Beckham teams and Lampard and Steven Gerrard, cocky. This is a team with an incredible spirit. It starts with their manager. Gareth Southgate's a good dude. You can criticize him on how he's coached in the business end of these tournaments in the last World Cup and the Euros. You can criticize that. What you can't criticize is the cloth this guy's made of. And when they lost in penalties, by the way, they should have beaten Italy in those Euro final. They were the better team. Remember, they just took their foot off the gas, and that was the problem. So it went to penalties, and who could forget when Sancho, Rashford, Saka missed the penalties? He's got his hand around them. He's sticking up for his players. It was a really touching moment. It was hard to pull against England. Now, we can pull against because of the fans, because they're obnoxious. And that Wembley final. But the players and coaches, no. They're solid peeps. And they don't want the attention. They get focused and they can push forward. So that's another aspect of this game, which is very interesting. We'll see how it plays out. I can't wait. And really soak it in. Enjoy that moment. Make sure we get a result against Wales. I'll call it Wales for now. Maybe they should have a Wales, Scotland, Ukraine combined team. That would be really good, huh? Let's say it's Wales. Get the result there. Find a way to get through. Because this group, with their age, we said about 24. This is about 2026. They cleared the first hurdle, which is to make the World Cup. Now you build, get that experience. This team is getting wiser by the minute, and that's a great thing.